Welcome everybody. This is me again, Andre Stein, for Group Financial Reporting, FAC 3704. And today we will be covering Learning Unit 5. I hope all of you have at least by now started to study. So, as always, all FAC 3704 classes will be recorded, and afterwards it will be made available for you to watch the recording at any time. So look out for the announcements. I add the recorded videos and the PDF slides that you can print for yourself. I add on announcements, so you can then download that. So normally I will upload the video and the slides the day after this live session or the live class, and so it will be either tomorrow or otherwise first thing Monday morning. But I'm sure if the recording is available by tomorrow morning, I will add it tomorrow. So again, same thing, I'm the lecturer on the module, and the FAC 3704 at unisa.ac.za email address is the mailbox for questions on the email, on the module. So if you've got any principal concerns, or if you've got questions on the exam or on the assignments, you're more than welcome to email me. And then for any administrative emails, please send it to our college support team. It is casinquiries@unisa.ac.za. Okay, I spoke about this already before. I'm just going to repeat this again. Assignment 2, that is not too far from now, as you know. And I already said that assignment 2 counts 30%. So please make sure you study hard for the assignment, and that you obviously make sure that you do it on the specific day. Please go and look at the announcements on assignment 2. We make it very clear on the announcements what it is that you need to know, or and if you've got any questions on that, you're more than welcome to send me an email. Okay, so there's only a assignment 1 and assignment 2. Assignment 1, as you know, is already done. So please look at the announcements. Okay, this is not just for the assignments. Certain students ask me questions via email or phone me, and then they've got queries on certain things. For example, now the announcements, and then I realize, but students do not always read their announcements. So I'm not sure. I think you should receive mails on your MyLife account whenever there's an announcement posted. I'm not sure, because I'm not in your shoes, so I'm not sure, but I think it does happen. But anyway, I want you to check your announcements and your MyLife emails regularly. Okay. On the announcements, I will never send you an email except for if you've asked me something via email. But anyway, from the exams department and so on, you can receive emails on your MyLife account, so check it regularly. On my site, on the My Module site, please watch your announcements regularly. Okay, then after assignment 2, the exam is closed. So by now, we do not have the exam dates yet, but you're going to see how fast the time goes by when the assignment 2 is done, and before you wipe your eyes out, it will be exam time. So now's the time, if you haven't started to study, and it seems like I say that with every class, but I really think now is the time to start studying, if you haven't done so. Okay, all slides or parts not covered, please work through it in your own time, and please remember that classes is not sufficient to pass the module. The classes does not cover everything in the study material, but I can tell you that I think if you understand the principles explained in the classes and the examples and questions in the classes, I think that's already a very good start. If you know that, and as I said in the previous classes, then you know the basic principles, then it should be easy from there on. But you still need to then work. And I'll talk about it throughout this class maybe, and I think I said it in the previous classes, you need to do questions from tutorial letter 102 and 103. And I see on my slide, I've got it here as 103 and 103. At least 103 is the, let's call it the, I will not say the better one, but the one with the more advanced questions. So that is the most important one. But I think 102, there's also very, very good questions in. Okay. So just to recap again, summary of learning unit 1, business combinations. Again, I'm just going to look at a few things. So remember that you need to know what is a business combination. You need to understand what controls mean. And whenever you see the word control, and normally that's what we give you in the exam, or we will give facts that you need to then, through those facts, realize that there's control. And we don't try to catch you out there because there's too much at stake in a big question to catch you out there. Okay, so maybe in a small discussion question, we can make it a bit more difficult, but we will normally make it straightforward what control is, or we will tell you entity A purchase shares in entity B and they've got control through that. Then you need to know it's a subsidiary. Okay, so by now, since we're in learning unit 5, you should already know when you see control, you need to think subsidiary. There's a certain way your mind should work. You should think of certain things. There's going to be a parent and a subsidiary. It's a business combination. There's going to be consolidation. You're going to, in the statement of profit or loss and statement of a financial position, add 100% of both these entities' amounts together, and then the consolidation journals, intercompany transactions, and. Okay, measure the assets and liabilities at acquisition at fair value. Okay, so that's also, let's call it straightforward, not 100 marks in there, but you'll see, and sometimes we can give you a fair value that's different to the carrying amounts, and then you need to do something, and then account for the non-controlling interest. Okay, and account for gain on bargain purchase or goodwill. And I said to you, those two things, if I say two, on the one side non-controlling interests and on the other side goodwill or gain on bargain purchase, those things normally counts quite a number of marks. You need to understand what non-controlling interest means. You need to be able to calculate goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. So remember, non-controlling interest is I purchase shares in your company. Okay, but not 100% of the shares. I purchase, for example, only 80%, and the non-controlling interest is then the remaining ones, those 20%. Okay, because you've got 100% shares. I bought 80, someone else bought 20. Okay, and that's what the non-controlling interest. And because of consolidation, because when we do consolidated statements, we add 100% of my items and 100% of your items. Okay, in the line items, for example, property, plant and equipment and so forth, then we need, okay, but then we need to know, okay, but that non-controlling interest, we need to account for them somewhere. Okay, and that's where it's coming in. It's the same with the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. You've got all your line items, revenue, cost of sale, blah, 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 100% of both entities, if there was only 2 entities in the group. And then at the bottom, right at the bottom, that profit that's remaining, we're going to split between the portion of the parent and the portion of the non-controlling interest. And that's where that calc counts a lot of marks again. So either there or in the statement of financial position, well, and on the statement of changes in equity. So normally it counts a lot of marks. Okay, and then the same of goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. You've got your consideration paid plus your non-controlling interest, less the fair value of the net assets that you've purchased, and obviously that will either give you goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. That was covered. By now you should know it. So typically in the exam, it will either be, let's call it hidden. You should know when there's a company that bought shares in another company, which is a subsidiary. Well, not necessarily just a subsidiary, but then If there's two entities, then you need to calculate these things and you need to know where to go and disclose them. So typically it's hidden. So we ask for the disclosure. You should know, you should account for them. Or what we will do is we will say, okay, part A of the question, calculate for me the goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. And then, for example, we'll say in question B, prepare the statement of financial position. Then you should know in part B, if you do the statement of financial position, but whoa, I've just in part A calculated as an example goodwill. Now I'm in part B, I've already calculated goodwill. I need to now in part B disclose the statement of financial position. Then you need to bring in that goodwill of part A. And then we're so nice as lecturers, we even give you marks for that because it's a transfer mark, what we refer to say, okay, at least you know what we ask you to calculate in part E, now in part B, you know where to use it. Okay, so just how nice is that? You get marks for the same thing. That's why you need to understand these basics. Okay. That you can go and read in your own time, just that red block. I said it in the previous class as well. Remember, subsidiary, control, associate, significant influence, and a joint arrangement, joint control. That's the key things or the key words that when you see them, you already know what type of entity it is. Okay, in this group, is it a subsidiary, associate, or a joint arrangement? Okay, and the rest of the things I think I've already touched on. Learning Unit 2 is to apply the consolidation procedures. I always say basics first. When you go and exercise questions from tutorial letter 102 and 103, do the basics first and always make sure when you mark yourself that you at least have the basics correct. With basics, I mean, did you answer what we ask? Did you put in the skeleton, as I refer to it always, or the layout or the frame of this, let's call it statement of financial position as an example? Do you at least have that basics correct first? Then we go after the basics and we'll eliminate the intra-group transactions and balances. And I think we've covered that quite a lot by now as well for subsidiaries and associates, and then provide for deferred tax. And I always say, remember, whenever you do intra-group transactions, remember the tax, because that's the easy marks. Because even if your unrealized profit, if it was just a plain calculation or disclosure, or if it was a journal, if that is incorrect, and you just apply the tax principle correct on that, we give you your marks. Okay? So then look there at the impairment of goodwill, just on top of the red line. Impairment of goodwill is always, let's call it also a parcella mark, okay? Because you need to know that at the end of the year, each financial year, you need to test goodwill for impairment. Remember, that's now if there were goodwill. And obviously, if we, in the additional information of a question, give you a sentence to say the impairment was tested for goodwill, the goodwill was tested for impairment, and by then you should know, okay, at least now I know there should be goodwill. Okay, that additional information sentence should then already trigger for you. If we do not ask you to calculate goodwill, it should trigger, okay, I must remember there should be a goodwill line item in my disclosure. If that is what it is what we require. If we require, for example, the statement of financial position. And then Examtech, prepare consolidated financial statements. That's important. Your statement of financial position, statement of profit or loss, or your statement of changes in equity. You should know that layout out of your head. And ladies and gentlemen, if you just look at tutorial letter 102 and 103, which 103 is old exam questions, and then all the examples I showed throughout the classes. That's the thing that we ask, and if you compare them with each other, you'll see they basically almost always the same, okay? Here and there's maybe one odd transaction that we bring in new in a specific question or example. Okay, but if you know all the other basic things, not difficult to pass this module. Okay, then exam technique, I think I covered that through all learning units. Okay, that's just the same. There's nothing else I want to say here. Just look for me here at the bottom. So those are the three statements I referred to just now. Please make sure you know the skeletons or layout, whatever you want to call it, of those 3 items. Okay. Learning unit 3, we talked about complex groups. This is just in learning unit 1 and 2. It was just, for example, a parent and one subsidiary with complex groups. As I said to you, it's exactly the same. There's just more entities. So there will be 2 subsidiaries, or a subsidiary and an associate, or a subsidiary that is a parent of another a subsidiary, and just go and look at learning unit 3. In that class, I said to you, everything is the same. It's just the direction where you need to start consolidating from, and you can go and look at or listen to that recording again if you can't remember, and the rest is the same. Okay, so investment in associates we talked about in the last class, learning unit 4, and we look at the purple one there, differentiate between an associate and a subsidiary. I think we already covered the how can you identify whether it's a subsidiary or an associate. Okay, normally, as I said, we give it to you. We tell you there was company A purchased shares in company B and they control, blah, blah, blah. Then you know it's a subsidiary. With associates, we'll say something like there was significant influence. Okay, so we really don't make that difficult for you. What you need to know, we make it easy for you. We say to you, basically straightforward, this is an associate or a control with that specific sentence we give. You need to understand that there's a difference how you account for them. Okay, because with a subsidiary, you'll use the consolidation techniques. With associate, you'll make use of the equity method. Okay, and remember, with associate, you're not going to add line by line for each trial balance transaction to the group financial statements. No, you'll just do for the parent or investor and the subsidiary. But for the associates, there will only be one line item in the statement of financial position, one line item in the statement of profit or loss. In the profit or loss, it's called share of profit of associate. And in the SFP, statement of financial position, it's this share, the investment in associate. Okay, then the same. There's intra-group transactions. You will go and do that as normally. Remember, with the associates, we're gonna. It's important to remember the percentage. Okay, it's important to remember the percentage shareholding, because you're gonna do that calculation, and then you're gonna multiply by the percentage shareholding. Remember, it's not like the subsidiary. You take 100% and take NCI away. If I bought 30% of your shares and I've got significant influence, I'm going to, for the group, only account for 30% of that transactions. Okay? So even if we eliminate intra-group transactions, we only eliminate 30%. If I bought 30% shares. If I've bought 25% shares, that's what we're going to account for, the 25. Okay, pro forma journal entries, you'll go and check that. Again, in red, tax implications, the red circle. As I said, always remember the tax, because that's the easy marks. Whatever your answer is, multiply by 27%, and that's your tax. And then obviously just make sure when there's income tax and deferred tax that you've got the debit and the credit correct. Okay? And then prepare and present. I'm not going to even go there. We've touched on that. Okay, so the objectives of learning unit 5. If you can recall, in class 4, the class of learning unit 4, I said to you, in my slides even there, I referred to associates the whole time, but I said actually with a joint venture, it's exactly the same. Okay, so learning unit 1 consists out of joint arrangements. All right, joint arrangement. A joint arrangement can either be a joint operation, and you'll see I've put a cross here because we will not ask any recording on disclosure and blah, blah, blah of joint arrangements, only to describe the method to account for a joint operation. In other words, we will only ask you a short discussion question on joint operations. Okay, so don't stress too much on joint operations for this module. Okay, so for just this module, maybe there will be a 3 or a 5 mark question in some of the exams going forward. Joint venture is the big thing. Okay, so learning unit 5 is joint arrangements that consist out of joint operations. We said, okay, maybe just a small discussion question and then joint ventures. And joint ventures is exactly the same as an associate, or you treat it the same, you account for it the same. The only difference is obviously, let's call it the name. So there, we will not say, I bought 25% shares in your company and I've got significant influence. That I will not say. There will be something in the line of, and I'll show you an example later on, of I bought 25% of the shares in your company and we've got an arrangement, a contractual arrangement to do X, Y, Z, or whatever the case may be. And if you see that thing about the arrangement that we have, I'll show you an example later, exactly what it looks like, then you know, okay, it's a joint venture. So the only thing that will differ, and you'll see that in the question that I do later, is instead of saying share of profit in associate, it will be share of profit in joint venture. Okay, so basically, a few years back, I actually had these two learning units. When I presented the class, I did it in one class. It's now split into two classes just because my slides were so long, so I never get to all the examples that I've got in there. So today I'm just going to do one example and I'll actually show you, because that specific question was referring to associate, and I on purpose left that example in there, or the question, and we're going to go through it very quickly today, and I'll just show you the difference between the joint venture and the associate. Okay, all right. I already said that, and then just want to see something quickly here. Yeah, that's exactly the same. The percentage is very important, the same as with associates. So a joint arrangement, on the left-hand side, you get a joint operation, which I said to you is not really that important for 3704. Small discussion question. That is when two parties go into an arrangement and there's no other separate entity or vehicle that they use to conduct this arrangement. Or if there is a separate entity, but the parties have rights to the assets and liabilities of that separate entity. Okay, so that's basically what a joint operation is. As I said, only small discussion questions. Then a joint venture is when you and me go into an arrangement. We also have a separate entity, but the parties, me and you, only have rights to the net assets of that arrangement. Okay, of the arrangement. Né? And typically, what will we ask in joint ventures? Exactly the same as with associates. It can be calculations. For example, I can say, calculate for me the share of profit in the joint venture of blah, blah, blah this period. Or the investment in the joint venture. And then we can also ask journals. Okay, that can be, for example, you and me are in a joint venture and in a joint arrangement, which is a joint venture, and then I bought inventory from you, or I bought an asset from you, or vice versa, and we can ask you for the journals, and then any discussion and disclosure questions. So exactly the same as associates. Okay. So there's one of my slides missing here. Okay. Maybe it will come in later. Objective of all my sessions. I just want to make a note here. I hope I haven't deleted that slide earlier this morning when I worked on this. Okay, so the objective of all the sessions, you can go and read this in your own time, but I really think what is important is number 7, if you're a repeat student, do something different. Okay, number 6, a good mark is very important. Obviously, I said to you, between assignment 1 and assignment 2, it contributes 45% of your final mark. And just think about it, if you can get 80 or 70% already for the assignments, how easy the way forward will be. Just remember, your exam, you still need a minimum of 40%. Okay, so way forward, point number 4, I want to quickly speak about that one. I already said from now on, Okay, if you've watched the videos and you've worked through the study material and you've done your assignments, I really believe from now on, the best thing to do is to practice questions from tutorial letter 103. And more importantly is you do the question and then at the end, you mark yourself. You compare your solution with our solution. And then you look at every amount and every description or every part of the question that we have on our solution that you do not have. And you need to ask yourself why. Why is there a difference between me and the lecturers? And you need to resolve that why. Okay? Just want to see something here on my side. Okay. Then this point number 2 and 1, the basic principles, I think in every class I explained that to you as well, okay, through the examples. So listen clearly what I say, how you need to approach it, and then you do it. Obviously, if you've got an approach that works for you, that's a bit different from what I said, it's fine, okay, because we're different. So if you've got a little bit of a different method, but still you need to stick to the basics. But if your approach is a little bit different, that's fine. Okay, and then examples and exam technique, point number 2, I also through all the classes discuss it, and in one of my later classes I will even show you some examples of exactly how we allocate the marks, so that you can see that as well, so that you don't, so that you understand, or not don't, so that you understand and know when you study what it is that we actually want and looking for you to score marks. Okay. You can go and do this in your own time. I think all of this we've already covered. Just again, look at this point number 5, the last bullet, financial statements and notes. Okay, that is going to be the bulk of the marks of your question of your exam question paper. Okay, and even in the assignment 2. It will be the bulk marks. Okay, when we ask, for example, prepare the statement of financial position. And that's why I focus a lot on that. And that's why that is important. With journals, normally, we will ask a pro forma consolidation journal or intercompany a transaction journal. We'll ask those type of things. But it's important to know and understand that, because you need that to be able to present the financial statements at the end. Okay? Right. Already covered that. All right. On this one, I can't put enough emphasis on this, so that you at least, it's easy, as I said, to by the way we put it in the exam papers, for you to see, okay, there's control is a subsidiary. It's important that you know the difference, how you account for it. That's very, very, very important. Okay. We already talked about that. And this is the slide I was looking for. So that other slide of mine was not supposed to be there. Okay, it's coming back here again. So at least we've already covered it. So I already said there's 2 categories of joint arrangements. It's joint operations and only a theory question, a really small question that will be asked. You can read that, the rest in your own time. And then joint ventures. Party in arrangement have rights to the net assets or equity of the arrangement. Okay, but as I said, I'll show you an example in a question later. We're not going to make it difficult for you to identify in the exam whether this is now a joint venture or a associate, as an example. We'll make it clear, and I'll show you an example later. Okay, we've already covered this slide. Okay, so this is the important part. Already discussed this last in the previous class when I covered with associates. So I'm going to repeat this. Investment in associate and joint venture is accounted for in accordance with the equity method, as I said earlier. Okay, so this is not like subsidiaries where we add 100%. I already said that. Okay, you will only have 3. Okay, let's just look at that first. The treatment of these 2, associates and joint venture, is exactly the same. It's only the wording that will disclose. Okay, so for these 2, okay, there's only 2 or 3 line items that will be included in your financials. But remember the percentage. Okay, if I bought 20% of your shares and you're an associate or a JV, I use that 20%. Okay, and the lines will be investment in associate in the statement of financial position and share of profit of associate in the statement of profit or loss. Remember, this is now associate or joint venture. The blue can be replaced by the green, depending on the information of the question. There's the joint venture info. So it's exactly the same. Okay? This is the difference that I was talking about the whole time. Okay? We're going to make it easy for you to see, okay, this is a parent and a subsidiary. If you look now at company A and company B, then you know if a subsidiary, this is what I do. Okay? 100% of all line items in the statement of financial position, and you have the NCI line item, which is actually the thing to let's call it correct that 100% that you've added. Okay, I've explained that at the beginning. Okay, so this is for subsidiaries, but for associates and joint ventures, this is what you're going to do. Okay, so this is the difference. So I want you to understand this slide. I've already covered it in subsidiaries. I've already covered it in associates. And with JVs is exactly the same. I want you to understand this slide. Okay, and then look at questions and look at a question where there's maybe one with a subsidiary and associate or JV. And then you make sure you can see what this slide means compared to or when looking at the solution of one of those questions. And then you'll see. Okay. Luckily, we have a question now later where you can see what I mean with this 100% and 100%, for example, and this percentage shareholding. I'll touch a little bit on it, but in all the previous classes, this was covered. So you need to make sure you understand what I mean with this slide. If not, you send me an email to the course email address and say to me, Andre, this doesn't make sense to me. And then I'll gladly assist, or we can even set up a Teams meeting. Okay, just you and me. We have a quick meeting, and I explain in more detail. Okay, associate or joint venture intra-group transactions is going to be exactly the same. Okay, and these slides that's going to follow now is exactly the same as with the associate. So you can go and do this in your own time because we already covered it in the previous slide. I just left it in here because for me it's really important to just refresh your memory a little bit, okay, about a few things. One, you need to understand the difference between intra-group transactions, that is PPE, property, plant and equipment, versus inventory. And even property, plant and equipment that's depreciable versus what is not depreciable. Okay? There's enough questions explaining all of these things. Having examples of all of these things. Then, to identify whether this is upstream or downstream. Okay? And with upstream, this is downstream. With upstream, it's just, remember what I said to you, if I'm the investor and I bought 20% of the shares in your entity and you're now an associate or a joint venture, then upstream means you sold inventory or PPE to me, okay, upwards. And downwards or downstream when I sold it to you. And you need to go and check. I've already made a summary on some of these things for you. Look at the difference between the journals when it's upstream and downstream. Okay, and it must make sense to you. Okay, remember when it is upstream, or let's go to downstream first. Okay, when I sold to you, that unrealized profit sit in my other income. And with consolidation, my other income line will be included in the statements. And that's why we're going to account or affect or correct the other income line item. But when it's an upstream, remember, I'm not adding 100% of your other income line item. I only have a line item, share of profit in associate. And that's why these line item will differ, and that's why you will adjust that at a different line item when you compare upstream versus downstream. Okay? Make sure you go and look at that and you understand it. And that's now for inventory, property, plant and equipment. And the same This example is for associates or joint ventures. Remember, you need to go and look back at the slides or the study material for those of the subsidiaries as well. Okay. Oh, sorry. One more thing on joint ventures and associates. Just remember the percentage shareholding. Okay. And then obviously tax. Right. Just want to see here. You can go and read this in your own time and this in your own time. Oh, this is just now obviously on that other one. I showed you how it looked with a journal, and these last two slides, but I already discussed this in the previous class as well. This is just the analysis of owner's equity. So look at the difference in the analysis of owner's equity as well. Okay, look there. Depending on, was it upstream or downstream? Okay, so look at the difference. Make sure you understand the differences. This is again just inventory, and you can go and look at this in your own time. We already covered this last week. Make sure you understand this, and make sure you understand the difference between this is now upstream and downstream for a investor and a JV or associate. Make sure you go and compare this to what a subsidiary look like. Remember, because a subsidiary will also affect the revenue and cost of sales line items as an example. Okay? I already said this number of times. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't put enough emphasis on how easy it really is to pass this module. And then the only, let's call it, little bit more difficult things is goodwill, non-controlling interest, and then these intra-group things. And there's only three that you need to know. Okay? It's inventory versus PPE, upstream or downstream, and subsidiary or JV or associate. And then remember tax. Okay? And most of these things, I already showed you the journals. And if I showed you the journal, okay, you can just study the journal, make sure you understand it. And then obviously you need to know, okay, if this is the journal, I've debited, for example, other income. Okay, where will that have an effect on my disclosure, on my statement of financial position? It's the same as what I said earlier. When we in part A say for you, calculate goodwill, you need to know in part B where to go and use it. It's the same with journals. As an example, if I ask you the journals in part A of intragroup transactions, remember when you do part B and C and D, if those journals maybe do not have an effect on whatever we've asked in parts B, C, whatever the other parts is. Because then that's the easy marks, because you've already done the work in part A, already got your marks for it. Then it's just to also go and apply it further in the questions to follow. We actually make it easy for you to ask it in stages. We basically guide you. Okay. This is now a question. And I did this on purpose. This was a question with an associate and a subsidiary, okay? And this question was in the previous class slides as well, but I did not deal with the question in that class because I said, you know, I've already in that class covered the principles, and that's the same with this one. So I'm not going to go into detail with this one. What I want to do is I want you to see that this was originally an associate, okay? And in the slides to follow, I'll show you, because we work with joint ventures now, what is the only difference that you should know of, that you need to take into account when you see a joint venture. All right? And then you'll see it's actually Learning Unit 4 and 5, except for that joint operations that we said we'll only ask a small discussion question. Then you'll see, except for that, actually Learning Unit 4 and Learning Unit 5 is almost the same. Okay, how to approach a question. You'll always do this for me. You'll always read the required first, okay? Because then you know what it is that we asked, so then you know what to go and look for in the question, okay? And when you read the question, you go and identify after that the group structure. You identify the entities in the group. Is it a subsidiary, joint operation, joint venture? blah, 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 associate or simple investment. And then the third one, identify the intra-group transactions. And that we actually make clear. Look at all the questions. You'll see it's very clear. So you'll see in each question, there's either 2 or 3 intra-group transactions. Okay. And in last week's slides, or the Learning Unit 4 slides and this slides, you'll see it's really straightforward. If you just think logically about it, or if you struggle to understand it, at least memorize the journals out of your head. Okay, this was a question paper from May, June 2019. There was 3 entities here: Chase, Marshall, and Rubble. Okay, I know now that there was in this question a subsidiary, which was Marshall, and Rubble was the associate. Remember I said to you this is associate, but I'm just going to show you the memo stays exactly the same even if we change this to a joint venture. This is the additional information. We'll look at some of this later. Point 3, if you go back, on 1 March 2017, Chase acquired 35% of the issued ordinary shares. Okay, already there, although I said to you in the previous classes, percentage shareholding doesn't always mean there's control or not control. Okay, there's those criteria that needs to be met for control to be in place. But already when you look at this and you see 35%, it should be a guidance for you, and you should know, okay, this is going to be either a joint venture or an associate. Then we read further. Okay, for a cash amount, blah, 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 the retained earnings, blah, blah, blah. And then, okay, the last sentence here. Chase Limited exercised significant influence over the financial and operating policy decisions. That is normally how we tell you this is an associate. Okay, so this is what it was. Okay, point 3 versus, so this is what it was for an associate. And if I change this question now to a joint venture, I replace this red part with this green part. And the only difference will be in terms of a contractual agreement with other operators, Chase Limited exercised joint control over the economic activities of Rubble. The arrangement was classified as a joint venture. This is typically how we give it to you in the exam. And that's why I'm saying, if you look at the percentage share, already a guidance, you should know. It's one of the 2, associate or joint venture, but I need to make sure I have the correct one, because if I write down associate, I'm going to lose my marks if it was a joint venture, because the lecturers gives me marks for the correct description. All right. So now it's clear. It's a joint arrangement. There again, additional information, blah, 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 blah. And there, if you look at point number 7, we even tell you there the Chase Limited Group measure investments in associates using the equity method in accordance with IAS 28, investment in associates and joint ventures. Okay. These 2 are exactly the same, except for, I just forgot to highlight that associates is the only thing that changed. It will now, in the question, if it was a joint venture, we will just say investment in joint ventures. Okay? Right. Let me take a sip of water. And let me continue. So now you can see this was a question originally between a parent, subsidiary, and associate. We're dealing today with joint joint arrangements, and we say we're looking at joint ventures. I've told you that joint ventures and associates, you'll treat it exactly the same. It's just the description that will differ. So in the answer of this question, I will show you now where it will differ. Okay? And where I've highlighted in green, this is the only difference between the associate and joint venture. Okay? And that's literally just the description. Okay? And then there's 1 or 2, I think actually just 1 red part. In this question, there was also a market-to-market reserve. You don't have to worry about that anymore. I think in the given information here, yes, I took it out. The market-to-market reserve was here, but somewhere in the disclosure it was there. I just Because otherwise, if I take it out there and you try to recalculate, you're going to tell me it's not balancing. So I didn't change all the figures because it's just this principle that I want to brought forward, or a few principles. Okay. How do I approach a question? Where do I start? You read what is required, blah, blah, blah. You can go and read this in your own time. I already covered some of that. Let's go to the required. So briefly discuss with reasons. I just want to switch my phone, sorry. Briefly discuss with reasons whether any of the transactions or events of Chase Limited described in the additional information constitute a business combination in terms of IFRS 3. Okay, and I'm not sure why I don't have it here, but I think this was something like 3 or 4 marks, this discussion. Okay, so can you see this is a discussion, and we will have discussion questions, not a lot, because I said to you most of the marks you'll see in these type of things. Okay, so when you see a discussion question, you just go and read the information. We know now there was Chase. We've identified the group structure. Chase is the parent or investor. They bought 35% of the shares in Rubble, which in the original question was an associate. Remember I said to you, I'm going to highlight it in green. So this should be a joint venture. Remember, this is just for explanatory purposes. All right. So you don't even have to write it down. You can write ASS down as well if you want to do a quick structure like this. In terms of the contractual agreement, blah, 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 blah. And this was the sentence who guided you to know this is a joint venture. And then 65% of the shares they bought in Marshall. You know it was a subsidiary because the sentence said Chase acquired control. Okay. And one other thing, in some questions we'll give you the percentage to say 65% of the shares was purchased. In other entities, other questions, we will give you the number of shares. We'll say Chase bought 130,000 of the 200,000 shares, or we will only say 130,000 of the ordinary shares. Then you need to go and look in the trial balance what the total number of shares of that specific entity is. And remember, this is not the rand value. This is the number of shares, because sometimes we'll tell you in the trial balance, Marshall has 200 shares, but the share capital value is 400,000. Then you can't go and divide 130,000 divided by 400, because then you don't agree apples to apples. Okay, apples, 130,000 ordinary shares divided by the other apple, which is the 200,000 number of shares, not rand value of shares. Right. You can go and read this in your own time. We've identified the transactions in that previous slide, and we remember the key words is control and the joint venture, and there is your disclosure. Okay, that discussion. That's just a small discussion. I can't remember. This was 3 or 4 marks. Okay. Then the second part was prepare the consolidated statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income of the Chase Limited Group. In a lot of questions, you'll see here, we talk about the other comprehensive income. That is this part. Okay, in a lot of other questions, there's not enough information to do this. Okay, so then obviously if there's no information, you don't have to do anything. So look here, the only difference between this skeleton or layout or frame, whatever you want to call it, is instead of this one line item, share of profit in associate, you're going to call it now share of profit of joint venture. And the same here. And if it was the statement of financial position, it will be investment in joint venture. Also, only that one line item. Okay. So there's my framework. And then you start with the parent and the subsidiary. And you add 100% of the line items of both entities. That is now this thing I was referring to. I'm going to scroll back quite a while now. Okay. Oh, this is now this thing that I was talking about. Okay, so this is now the 100% of all line items. And when I show you now the NCI, this is now that part. Okay, let me go back to that slide. Okay, we've added now 100% parent, 100% subsidiary. Then we go and identify items in the additional information which relates to the subsidiary. Okay, and you'll see this is points number 1, 2, and 5. So 1 is just the normal info of the at acquisition. Okay, and you're going to use that to calculate goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. This is also just related to that, point number 2. And then point number 5 is the intra-group transaction, where we said Chase purchased inventory from Marshall. Okay, so if Chase purchased and Chase, if Chase purchased, it means the parent purchaser, this was an upward sale because the subsidiary sold this to the parent. Okay, so you identify everything to do with the subsidiary, and then you're going to account for them. Okay, so this is the intra-group transaction, point number 5. Okay, so the journal there, the total sales was 450,000 Rand. Okay, and you account for the 450,000 Rand in revenue and cost of sales. Okay, because in the one entity it was revenue that was inflated, because that actual sales was not to third parties outside of me and you, outside of our group. So we're gonna reduce our revenue of the group and reduce our cost of sales. Okay, so there I've done that. So can you see how easy this is? I've add 100% of the parent, add 100% of the subsidiary, and then I'm taking out that journal. That's just on the total sales. Then we still need to look at the intra-group unrealized profit. Okay, so that's now on the closing inventory. I'm not going to go into detail again because we've done it. But I want you to see, like I said earlier, if we in part A ask you for the journals, you need to understand that you need to go and bring these effects into your disclosure of the financial statements into account as well. So cost of sales is a line item in my statement of profit or loss, and also income tax expense. Remember, because these two, inventory and deferred tax, is on the statement of financial position, which we did not ask here. Okay, I'll come back to the slide again, and there I've accounted for my cost of sales. I added it because it's a debit, cost of sales, and income tax, which is an expense, I've credited, so I need to deduct, I need to reduce it. Okay, this red, I'm not going to discuss this now. This was a, let's call it a tricky part in this question. I really don't want you to stress about it. If you can read through it in your own time and you understand it, great. If you don't understand it, don't stress about it. If you don't understand it, but you want to understand it, you're more than welcome to contact me at any point in time. Okay. We've done that journal. Okay. Then there was intra-group dividends. Okay. So now I want to say announcement because I want you to focus on announcements. The subsidiary paid a dividend, okay, of 92,500 because I own, or not I, the parent owns 65% of the shares in the company. Remember, if they paid out 92,500, then me, Chase, received 60,000 of that 92. That is the 65% we talked about earlier. So I've included this in my other income. Income is normally a credit. So in my individual statements, me as Chase, as a parent, I've included it there. I credited it. I added it to my income. But now for consolidation purposes, I need to take it out. Okay, and remember, we said there's non-controlling interest because they've got 100% shares. So they've paid out 100%. 65 goes to me, and the remaining 35% goes to non-controlling interest. And this question was now, let's call it a simple, stupid question, because this non-controlling interest percentage is 35%, and that's now the same percentage as the shares purchased in this joint venture in this question. Don't confuse the two 35%. This non-controlling interest is 100% less the 65% me as a parent bought. Okay, so let's go back to the journal. So other income and non-controlling interest and dividend paid. So other income is a line item in my statement of profit or loss. So I go and deduct that. So why deduct? Remember I said you originally included there. When I received that dividends from Marshall, I included it here. Now for consolidation purposes, I say, no, whoa, this did not come for us as a group from an external party. It came from an internal party. I need to take it out. And remember, if it was never accounted for here, let's say I say to you in the additional information, Marshall Limited paid a dividend of 90,000, blah, 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 and US Chase owns 65%, but you have not updated your accounting records of it. Then it means it was not included here. I do not need to go and deduct it again here. So just make sure of that. So we can play around with words or the way we give things. So you always need to think, okay, what happened in these entities? What should have happened? And then say, okay, do I need to correct that or adjust that, yes or no? All right. So there you can see again the green things that I said only need to be share of profit of joint venture. That's the only difference. So actually, I'm done explaining that difference. I'm just going to other principles, basically more on the statement of profit or loss, because we covered a statement of financial position last class. Okay. Now we're going to look at NCI, and that's, as I said to you, the one that counts a lot of marks. Remember, because we work with the subsidiary, and we've added 100% of all their things, we need to now adjust non-controlling interest. In other words, we're going to take the profit that should be here, and we're going to split this profit, this 100% of you and me, between what belongs to the owners of the parent and what belongs to the non-controlling interest. But remember, this profit consists of 100% of me as a parent and 100% of you. In this case, I only own 65% of the shares. So I only need to go, when I look at non-controlling interest, I only need to go and look at your figures. Okay, so I will not take this total to calculate non-controlling interest. I will take your figures. In other words, the subsidiaries figures. When I refer to me, it's the parent. When I refer to you, I refer to the subsidiary for this specific example now. So now we go and we calculate the NCI. Okay. We're going to calculate the profit from Marshall. In other words, look at this 3220. The things we already included here. Okay. We calculate the profit. This is now the revenue plus other income, less cost of sales, less other expenses, less income tax, and we get a total. Okay. That was now in your individual books. All right. Normally these things are given as a figure like that. Then you're unlucky. It's only a half mark or a mark. But when we give it in a trial balance, all of these things, you get marks for each one of these line items that you use. And that's why I say it's important to understand the principles. So it's only Marshall's info adjusted with the things that's having an effect on Marshall. Okay. So unrealized profit included in inventory because Marshall sold. Okay. So because Marshall sold upward to me as a parent, it was profit included there inside their information. That's why we take it out. And because we take the profit out, we reverse it. The tax effect will always be the opposite sign. And there's your adjusted profit. In this case, for example, you will earn marks for that, there. And remember, this is now one amount. If there was no part A with a journal, you will have to take the closing inventory, multiply by the ratio that or the profit margin we give you to get to this. So it's quite a number of marks. And then the tax effect, again, marks. And then, remember what I said, always the percentage. Okay? As I said, you as a subsidiary have 100% shares. I bought 65%, so 35% belongs to the other people, the non-controlling interest. Okay? And there I get to the amount, the total, and there's my non-controlling interest amount. So basically I took this profit that will be here. You'll see it at one of the slides to follow at the end. I took that profit and I say, but that profit or comprehensive income, a certain portion belongs to the owner and the rest to the non-controlling interest. And obviously that NCI you will have to go and calculate based on the subsidiary, or if there was more than one subsidiary, to all the subsidiaries. Okay, with their individual information, you calculate it. Okay, now we go and calculate the total other comprehensive income. Okay, in this case, I'm not going to go into detail. There was other comprehensive income for Marshall. Again, the non-controlling interest shareholders, you multiplied by their percentage shareholding, and that's the 10,000 that you will add here. So you will always have this total comprehensive income and total profit that you split here. Profit between the owners and the NCI. Sorry, I referred to this total the whole time. That profit total that will sit there when you'll see the figures later, you go and split here between parent and NCI, and then this total here, okay, because there was a fair value adjustment, blah, blah, blah. That was the other comprehensive income for the parent and the subsidiary, okay, and then you will have a new adjusted total here, and then you split that total here between the owners and NCI. So here you can see already we've calculated earlier the 320 non-controlling interest. So your starting point here will be also that 320. Get a nice free mark because you just use something that you've just calculated. And then the NCI on the subsidiaries part, on Marshall's part, on their other comprehensive income. I just showed you that 31 as well. That's 10,000. And that 10,000 you put in there. Right? Then you go and identify the transactions that is now the associate or joint venture. All right. And in this case, it was 3, the acquisition information, and point 4, where Rubble, the investor, sold inventory to Chase. So this was a downstream thing, sale. And what I want you to see here, this was the 2019 year. And we give you figures here for 2019 and 2018. So in this example, there was opening and closing inventory. And just go and read the slides and see how you account for that. Okay? Again, same thing, closing inventory. So there's your journal for the closing inventory, because this was now, let's just go back there. Rubble sold. Okay? In other words, you as the associate or joint venture sold to me, so it was upward. And remember what I said, when it's upward, that profit was in your books. But for consolidation, we do not have a revenue and sales line item for you. We will only have sharing profit of joint venture. Okay, we're working with joint ventures now. All right. And there's the journal, same principle. Closing inventory was this. Your profit markup was that on the selling price. Okay, and then you multiply it by the percentage shareholding, and you get to a total of 5544. And this was now on the opening inventory. We split here the journal into the share of profit and the tax effect into 2. And I said here, but remember, because both of these are share of profit and associate, you could have also do these 2 journals or line items in one, the net effect of the 2. You'll get to the same answer. Okay, so this was the opening inventory. And because it was opening inventory, okay, if we just go and look at this, the effect is on retained earnings. All right, because last year, when we did the same journal like here with the closing inventory, so in 2018, we did this, but that share of profit in joint venture in 2018 run over to 2019 and is then part of retained earnings. And that's why it will affect your retained earnings. So at the end, it will have this 2018 figure will be sold now in 2019. So it will have a 0 effect, because at the end of 2019, there's no that inventory is no longer at hand, okay? Except now if we told you, listen, even that inventory of 2018 is still outstanding, okay? But if it was sold, and normally you may assume that was sold, part of it, because you adjusted it for it last year, will affect your retained earnings, and the others will affect your share of profit in joint venture, because now you are selling it in this year, okay? And that's why you will credit it. But retained earnings, because it was in 2018, also the same journal as the previous one for the current year, it has an effect on your retained earnings, which will be now your statement of changes in equity. Okay? So then you go and calculate your share of profit in associate. Remember, and that's again that slide, I'm not going to turn back to it because it's a number of slides back where I showed you with the subsidiary, you add 100% of each line item. With the associate and joint venture, no. You go and do a calculation of the associate one line item and you say, okay, the profit of the year for Rubble. Again, sometimes we can give you this figure, or in this case, the trial balance of all the revenue, other income, cost of sales, other expenses, income tax, blah, 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 whatever that was in that question, okay, at 35%, remember, or if I bought 25% of your shares, 25. Remember, this is now what I said. This is not the NCI percentage. Don't get confused. This question was a little bit stupid because the 65 other portion is 35 and the 35 shares purchased in this case in the joint venture was also 35. So this is the number of shares I purchased in you as Rubble, as the joint venture. So I multiply that profit with the percentage. I then go and adjust for all these intra-group transactions. In this case, it was just the one with closing and opening inventory. And there's my total. And that total you will transfer to the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income as one line item. So can you see why I say these things? If you go and you add the associate, Rubble's information, also 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, each line item, you don't get any marks because principally you're way wrong. Okay? It should be all included in this one line item. And that's why I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, if you already identified and we make it straightforward, there's a subsidiary and there's an associate, or only one of the two, or a joint venture and a subsidiary. Okay? Then you just need to do this part and look at all these easy marks. Okay, to go and calculate this, if we give you especially not this profit figure as a single figure, this is straightforward. Okay, revenue plus other income, blah, 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 blah. Remember to multiply it by the percentage shareholding for JVs and associates. Okay, you multiply it, you adjust for the intra-group transactions. And you get your total and you're going to add it in that one line item. Easy marks. Okay. Then the same with the other comprehensive income. You go and adjust for the other comprehensive income at 35% again. And there it is. Share in other comprehensive income of joint venture. There it is. Okay. Then intra-group dividends. Remember when the joint venture paid the dividend, okay, 100% of it, I received 35% of it, okay, and I included that 35% in my other income. So we need to eliminate it. And what is always the line item? That's now for me as an investor or parent, and the other side is always investment in associate. Remember, with associates and joint ventures, there's nothing like non-controlling interest because you did not account for 100%. Okay? So there's only the investment in joint venture line item in the statement of financial position. That's again one of those green things that you must just remember. In this case, it should be joint venture. Okay? And there, because included in my other income, I also added that dividend that you've paid out, that portion to me was included there. I now go and deduct it. The same as the subsidiaries portion that they've paid to me. Okay. I just want to see something here. Okay. Let me just take a sip of water. Okay, one step back. Sorry, one step forward. Then you go and you add up all the totals. So you've done your calculations now here. Now you add up all your totals, because sometimes the students will go and they will have the calcs here, but they don't put it here in the total, in the total column. And then you unfortunately also lose marks. So remember to do that. So this is just what I want to show you, because earlier there was no amounts to show. So you're going to take your profit for the year, the 2.8 million. I'm just rounding it now. Okay. And you're going to split it here. Profit attributable to the owners and NCI. Okay. So that is the split here. All right. Sorry, there's your profit. I made a mistake. That was the profit before tax. Sorry, profit for the year, 2,027,000. Your profit. And you just split it here between the parent and non-controlling interest. And then you take that same profit, adjust with other comprehensive income. Okay. And then you have your total comprehensive income for the year, the 2,069,000. And you do that same split here. Total comprehensive income, the 2,069. You're going to split here between parents and non-controlling interest. And what I said earlier is this non-controlling interest starting point, this one, will always be whatever you've calculated there. So you start with that. This is basically on the profit part. Remember, profit is actually the profit after tax figure. And then you adjust for the other comprehensive income figures. And that is it. Okay, now the other part of the question was the statement of changes in equity. That was part C. So we've dealt last week with the statement of financial position. We've dealt now with the statement of profit or loss. In this case, I should actually go back to my required, because I want to show you something there. Prepare, part C, prepare only the retained earnings column of the statement of changes in equity. Remember, we don't have always time to ask you everything in a question. So prepare only the retained earnings column. All right. Now I need to go back there again. There we go. So there's my framework or layout of my retained earnings column. Okay. And you always then have to start with your opening balance. And then the changes of the current year and dividend paid and balance at the end. You need to know which lines are affecting my retained earnings column. Which line items will affect your non-controlling interest line column. Which line items will affect your share capital column. Obviously, in this instance, it wasn't required. Okay, so first, you're going to put in the easy stuff. What is the easy stuff? This was already calculated, okay, in there. So this was already calculated to the owners of the parent. There it was already calculated, profit for the year. All right. So can you see sometimes in a question, like I said, you need to calculate or do something, but then you can use some of those information already in the next question. So that's the easy marks. So already if your layout or framework or skeleton is correct and you already transfer this correctly, you already score a lot of marks. Dividends paid, okay, only the dividend paid of the parent is presented in the dividend paid of the retained earnings column. So in this column, when you have the line item dividend paid, it's only the parent's portion that you include there. Okay? All right. Now you're going to go and calculate the opening retained earnings. And to do that, I'm not going to go into detail. You need to make sure I just want to go one step back. Oh, I didn't put it in here. It's in the next slide. You need to make sure you've got the opening retained earning of the parent or investor. Tick, you've got it. Then of Marshall, the subsidiary. But remember, to get the subsidiary's opening retained earnings, you need to look at a few things. Okay, it's the movement in since acquisition to the beginning of the year. With the parent, it's easy. So in the trial balance, normally, we give you the opening retained earnings. For Marshall, for the subsidiaries, normally we give it to you. But remember, at acquisition, prior to that, we've eliminated that retained earnings. So you need to take the retained earnings given, less the at acquisition retained earnings, and then look here, multiply. This is now different to the statement of financial position and statement of profit or loss. You'll add the percentage shareholding. I only own 65% of your shares. So in that movement, I'll only add that. This is in brackets because in this example, the movement wasn't positive. Okay. So the current year opening retained earnings was less than the at acquisition retained earnings. So again, that was something that's, let's call it a little bit different or tricky in this question. Okay. So normally in a case like this, if you by accident did not put it in brackets to deduct it, we'll still give you your marks for your calculation because you at least know you should take the movement. So we'll give you the marks for your current year opening balance less the at acquisition and your mark for multiplying it by the percentage shareholding. But then we'll say, okay, but whoa, you missed something. You missed that the sign in this instance. Normally it should be positive. Now it's negative. And then we'll just deduct 1/2 mark for that. So you still get 2 out of the 3 half marks. And then everything else. Okay, if there was intra-group transactions in that specific years, remember, retained earnings opening balance is the beginning of the current year. So if there wasn't anything in the prior year affecting year, that is where you stop. But then in this case, there was a gain on bargain purchase in that day. Remember, and because this acquisition wasn't in the current year, but in prior years, it's affecting my retained earnings opening balance. That's why you account for it here. And then tick. We're done with the subsidiary. Now we go to the joint venture and we say we also bring in the movement in since acquisition to the beginning of the year. And here you can see it's positive because the opening retained earnings given in the trial balance is more than the at acquisition. That means this company made profits since acquisition and 35%, the amount we or the percentage I own in your company. And then we take out that unrealized profit of the closing inventory. Remember, because that took part or place, not part, place in the previous years. And in this case, there was also a gain on bargain purchase, all right, which we need to account for. Okay. Take note of the percentages, ladies and gentlemen. That's really important. Okay. In the statement of changes in equity, especially. Remember, with subsidiaries, in the statement of financial position and statement of profit or loss, you have 100%, 100%, and then you take out the NCI. In the statement of changes in equity, the retained earnings column should already be the excluding NCI. That's why you brought that other figure, this figure, the 1.7, directly from the statement of profit or loss after the NCI was taken out. So just take the differences and there you go. So you can, in the exam, reference, I always emphasis or put emphasis on referencing. You will, for example, have balance as at 1 March, blah, 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 or opening balance, and then you call it Calc 1 or Calc C1 or only C1 maybe. Okay, and then I go to your calculations and I see, okay, there's C1. Then I know this is your calculation for this 1.5 million. Yes, it agree. You transferred it from the calculation to the disclosure. And there's your total. And this is it. Ladies and gentlemen, I really hope that this was a good session for you. And as you can see, really no difference between, big difference between associate and a joint venturer. A joint venturer is going to be the one that's going to count marks, and yeah, go and do some exercises. And if you've got any questions, please make sure that you email us or me at the module email address. Okay. I hope this was helpful. Let me know. And if there's any feedback on the discussions or the short videos that I upload, please do share them with me on my class. Thank you so much. I see someone's clapping hands there saying thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You must enjoy your evening further and go and study hard. This is the end of this class.